Good day to you. I am taking a little break. I'm taking the Suzuki Hayabusa out for a little stretch, which is pretty amazing considering it's the day before Christmas, and I'm riding around on my motorcycle quite comfortably, which is awesome. And the Hayabusa loves the cold air. There's the Hayabusa. And I'm actually out here at Keeneland Raceway. If you're familiar with the election area, really pretty out here. And I'll come out here and practice some different things and stuff that I wouldn't want to do on the road, and just to sit out here. And sometimes I come out here in the morning and watch the horses run. But so this question, I've been sitting on this for a while because mainly it's probably one of the best questions I've ever been asked, and it really has forced me to put some serious thought in this, and it's also kind of created some offshoot questions. Chris reached out to me a couple weeks ago and was like, dude, I just graduated with an exercise science degree, and I'm working at a commercial gym, and I am so lost. I have no idea what to do with people. I'm looking at a bunch of different things online, and I'm so confused about where to start and what to do. And I feel you, man. Like, I feel you, Chris. And I actually chatted with Pat Davidson about this, and we kind of came to the conclusion that we really wouldn't want to be a new coach today, because there is so much information, and there's so many people that are saying like this is the exact way to do things, or there's so many different systems, and it's really kind of hindered like experimentation, and like you trying to like kind of figure things out. And so I'll kind of give you some of my history, and I'll give you some of the, a story of 3 clients that I had when I first started in the private sector that, really looking back now, like, I really didn't have, well, they all did great. So, but I don't know near what I know now. And all 3 of these clients had great results. And one of them is still training with me today. And I had spent a couple years at Liberty and some time at Arizona, basically watching, and my education was in elementary ed. It wasn't in like exercise science or kinesiology or anything like that. So everything I'd learned had come from my own wrestling and come from my own reading. Muscle Media 2000 and Charles Poliquin and Ian King and all these people. There wasn't a lot of information back then. And my wrestling coach, and then I was lucky to be exposed to Charlie Francis because I grew up in northern Canada, and he used to train Ben Johnson at the University of Alberta, and I used to go watch Charlie sometimes and talk to him a little bit. And then I was getting into powerlifting, and so the information I was getting from Louis Simmons and my own training. But really I had started out, so the first kid I got was maybe 16, and he had fractured his spine competing in a high school powerlifting meet, maxing out doing a straddle deadlift where you're straddling the bar and you deadlift, and he ended up, there's actually 2 or 3 kids from that school that happened to, and I ended up rehabbing all 3 of them, or working with all 3 of them after they went through their PT or whatever they did. But this kid in particular was particularly a challenge because they had decided to put him in a back brace for like 8 months, and they didn't really do much with him after that. And this kid was hungry. Like, you could tell, you could see it in his face and his eyes. And I mean, he was skin and bones. He was like 135. And, we were just like, well, he talked about wanting to play in college, but he had, he hadn't really played much football. He had been a kicker and a little bit of a wide receiver. And he was a good athlete. He played soccer and other things. And you could tell he was really hungry. And I was just like, well, let's just kind of, let's just start with this and see where it goes. And we literally had to start from scratch. And so the principles that I had learned, from Coach Arnett, Coach Arnett was really the first person that really exposed me to, getting someone from physical therapy back into the weight room, or like pre-surgery training. Like, we had people get hurt at Arizona, and he'd be like, well, this is the kind of things you can do with someone who's blown their ACL out to train them before they go to surgery. And these are the kind of things, you got somebody with a shoulder, he started introducing me to things that now I know why those things were successful, because I have a better understanding, following people like Bill Hartman. I have a better understanding of a lot of this stuff worked. But I had seen Brad work with some of these people, and one of the principles that I got from Brad, and not only Brad but Charlie Francis, is, if you start with the right dose, people can handle just about anything. Like if you start with a tiny bit of arsenic and you slowly build that arsenic up, people can handle a pretty large amount of arsenic and it won't kill them. Now that doesn't mean you don't do anything, but that means that you can start off with some real basic things and try it, and it's not gonna hurt them, and then you can see where we're going with this. And at the time I started in my own training, one of my buddies, maybe it was Windler, was like, dude, like I got this Parisi warm-up and it looks like it's total sissy stuff, and he sent me I got the DVD, and he's like, dude, this thing kicked my ass. And he's like, I've been doing it for a week and made me feel better. So I started doing this Parisi warm-up. You're in quadruped, you're doing knee circles, you're doing stuff on your back, you're doing all these different things. And I was like, this is basically like phys ed stuff. And I was like, this kid hasn't done anything in a year. This is a really good place to start. And then from Louis, I got, the GPP stuff, and we started dragging the sled. And before you know it, this kid started moving better. He started putting on muscle, and then he started going out and practicing running his routes, and I would go watch him run his routes. And then we went to like a West Side for Skinny Bastards template. And to make a long story short, this kid went from 135 pounds and coming off a severe injury, to running a 4.3 at a Wake Forest camp, football camp, and finishing second in the 100-meter dash in the state of Kentucky, behind a kid who, was stupid fast and ended up going to Kentucky and playing in Kentucky, who happened to be on his team. But then he ended up getting picked up had an incredible season of high school football, and ended up getting picked up by Wofford and got his whole education paid for. And one of the main reasons he got picked up by Wofford, not because he was a great kick returner or punt returner or anything like that, is because of his blocking. And that is something we talked about. I was like, man, if you're going to play for only 1 year and you want coaches to like notice you as a wide receiver, besides like making great catches and all that stuff, block. Like if you knock the hell out of somebody as a wide receiver, especially you knock the hell out of a linebacker, coaches are going to notice, and they did. And Wofford was a running school, so he got to run back some big kicks against Air Force in South Carolina, and he had a really good time. And he ended up going to school in Wofford and getting a great degree from there. And so looking back on him, I have a better exercise selection repertoire now, and I think I'm more efficient at what I do. But he was able to get some really, really nice results, and just by keeping things simple. And we experimented. We would try things and see if it worked, and then try different things. And then because he was doing really well, one of his neighbors, their daughter, who was a soccer player, I believe she was 14. If you go to the Jim Laird website, at the very bottom, it's like my comeback, and it has two of the people that I'm going to be talking about. And I'm not talking about this to brag. I'm just talking about this like, hey, like I had 3 really challenging cases. And I really didn't know much when I started, other than the practical experience I had. And I got some pretty nice results because, my clients worked really hard and they were dedicated. But then I just kept it really, really simple. We just tried different things and were consistent. And so things don't have to be necessarily perfect. But Miss Amanda had come off her 3rd non-contact ACL. And so we sat down and, I asked her what her goals were. And she said, I just want to play in high school. That's it. I just want to play my senior year and I'm done. So I asked her about what she had done for her rehab for the last 3 times. And she said, well, I passed all my stuff. I got cleared and I started, doing distance training and all this stuff. And she never really did anything to get her ready to play in the games. And then, a lot of times with these kids, I've worked with a number of repeat ACL girls over the years, and guys too. And what happens is they get cleared in PT, and then they immediately get thrown onto the field, and they play in a full game, and then they get tired and they get sloppy. So I had to sit down with the coach and the athletic trainer, and we talked, and he said, look, hey, this is what she's done the last 3 times, and honestly, if she does her knee again, she's in big trouble. So let's take a different approach. What do you think about, hey, how about her? She practices until she feels like she gets tired, and if her ability to move starts getting sloppy, let her rest, and then have her do some more, let her rest. And we started with in the games, just a few minutes at a time. And with her training, I mean, lots of sled dragging, lots of the floor warm-up stuff. And, all of a sudden she started moving better, and she was able to drop her hips, and she was able to absorb force. And we practiced, cutting and doing a lot of low box drills. And, if you look at like Lee Taft, a lot of the stuff Lee is doing, we were doing like skipping over boxes and practicing moving and changing direction and not doing, just, going out and running 5 miles, which is what she was doing before, and then getting her stronger. And we just tried different things, and I'd go watch her play and practice, and we took our time, and she was able to play her entire high school year without knee braces. And she was also able to she went from one of the slowest girls on the team to one of the top 5 fastest. And then she'll still message me today and be like, hey, I still do lifting, and my knees are great, and I'm doing well, and which is really, really neat, because and the fact that they trusted me with her, but once again, I don't have the knowledge that I had now, but I just kept it simple. And then the third guy that came to me was a guy named Mike, and he actually used to work here at Keeneland. He used to run the concessions here. He would come off a double hip replacement, and he happened to be training with somebody else at the time who was having him do some crazy things like dragging heavy sandbags sideways and stuff, but to each their own. But he started talking to me, and I was like, man, can you even do a push-up? And he was like, no. And so we started, same thing, basic sled dragging, circles, real basic stuff. We found out, back then, I was into Westside Barbell. And so, everybody was doing reverse hyper. So we got him on the reverse hyper, and we found out the first time that he couldn't do reverse hypers. That totally, his back did not like reverse hypers. So we shortened, we put a box up there, and then he just did a short range of motion reverse hyper. Now, knowing what I know now, probably wouldn't use it. I don't use reverse hypers with him anymore. I've got so many other things that are better, but the combination of the sled dragging and just basic stuff, and as we've evolved, he's been with me since 2002. His training, looks, totally different now, what we do with him now and what we did with him then. But he's able to downhill ski. He's got a knee replacement and 2 hip replacements, and he's missing a pec. He was born without a pectoral muscle, which makes it even more interesting. But with him, it's the same deal. And I got to have a really good relationship with his physical therapist, and I would bounce things off her, and we would talk back and forth. And she sent me clients over the years, and I've sent her clients over the years. And that's another thing too. Experimenting is great. And honestly, if you improve people's general fitness, if you get people sleeping better and eating better, you're going to be able to help the vast majority of people. And, the other concept that I learned early on from Brad Arnett was this joint by joint type approach, like the Gray Cook kind of deal, where if something's wrong with your knee, it's not necessarily your knee. It could be something in your hip. It could be a problem in your ankle. It's usually something somewhere else. So if you generally get people moving better, a lot of times, it will solve a lot of the issues that are going on up and down the chain. So that was a big part of a lot of my early success. But those are 3 people fresh out of the gate that I had that were, extremely challenging. And I just kept things really, really simple. And, I leaned on my phys ed background, and I leaned on, just common sense. You said you work for a facility. So one, you got to ask yourself a question, when you're looking at other people that are doing courses or training, what is their background? Are they a PT? Are they a strength coach in a college setting? Are they private sector? Do they all do online training? They're not you. And you have to figure out what works best for you. That doesn't mean you can't look at stuff and say, hey, that makes sense. Let's try a variation of that with what I'm already doing. But, if you're working in a commercial gym and you have a template you have to work with that the gym's giving you, and you start doing things the way you want to do them, you're going to get fired. And it happened to me a number of times. With me owning a gym, when you're managing people and you have a system and you have to keep people within the system, that's very challenging. So I got to be on the other end of that too, where you've got people that are doing different continuing education, and you're trying to keep things more or less on the same page. That's one of the reasons that I don't have employees anymore, and I just work for myself and I do some of my private stuff, is because I'm not very good at managing people, and I'm not very good at systems and things like that. I have my own little way of doing it, and that's kind of how I do it. And that doesn't mean I'm not willing to learn from other people, or trust me, I watch a lot of different people, but I put it through the filter of what I need for my business, because, most of the people that are coming to me, they don't have a lot of time. They're busy moms. They want to look better and feel better. And they want, to exercise. They don't want to spend, a whole bunch of time doing correctives and things like that. Well, I have certain clients that need that. And a lot of those clients I will outsource. If I can't help them with just general good exercise selection, I have a number of, physical therapists and chiropractors and people like that I will refer them to. And that's worked out wonderfully. Develop that relationship with PTs and people like that has really helped. So you have to understand, like, what is your business model? I mean, if you're a massage therapist or a PT and you can put hands on people and you want to go for that client that's like in the middle between, rehab and physical therapy, if that's what you want, then, you might need to be a little more technical and a little more specific. But most people just need general, simple. They need to learn how to, essentially sit down and stand up and move and learn how to, put weight, use muscles instead of joints and they need to use the right things to get their stability from, as opposed to jamming into joints or hip capsules and all that sort of deal. Here's another example. When I was doing classes, when I had, classes in the gym and employees, I had a lady who was in the class and literally it was so bad that, God bless her soul. She couldn't even sit down and stand up on a box without making it look like she had several shots of Fireball or something. It was bad. And so we just started with a wall sit. And, a lot of people are like, oh, wall sits are non-functional. They're not, but this lady did wall sits. That was what she did instead of squats. And then we paired it with some bear holds and some different things. And in 3 weeks, all of a sudden, the wall sit put her pelvis in a better position. It put her rib cage in a better position. It built some strength. And that was enough for her. When she went back to sitting down and standing up off the box, she was able to control herself. And then after a little bit of that, we were able to load that. And then she could end up, like 2 months later, doing a decent goblet squat. So, don't be afraid to experiment, and don't be afraid to meet people where they're at. That's a big part of it too. And a lot of this is trial and error. And, like, you learn little things, like way back when, like Brad Arnett, one of the people that taught me, hey, like we had people in the weight, 50, 60 people in the weight room, and people were having problems squatting. We'd elevate their heels. And we thought it was ankles at the time, but now with the better, and it might be ankles still, but I have a better understanding. It's the position of the pelvis that, is positioning that hip so they can get a better squat pattern. So, don't be afraid to try, different things and see what goes on. Like I noticed early in my own training career when I was having back stiffness or stuff after workouts, I'd go back to a lot of my old wrestling warm-ups, and a lot of the wrestling stuff we did was bear crawls and then push-up position, walk yourself up to your feet. And I noticed if I did sets of that before my workout or in between my squats and deadlift sets, I would hinge better, I would squat better. Well, now I know that, I was very extended at the time, and that walk-up was taking me to the other extreme so I could find somewhere in the middle, and so I wasn't like super duper duper extended. It made me feel better and it made me move better. And so I started doing that with my clients, and now I understand why that works for some people. But I wouldn't get too caught up in all the minutia. And when I have an intern come in, I ask a lot of questions. Honestly, if you're a new coach, as opposed to like the sets and reps and all that kind of stuff, honestly, what I would focus on, especially if you're working at a commercial gym, is really learning how to talk to people and really, being a nice person and being able to talk. You're probably young, you're probably in your early 20s. Learn how to talk to people in their 40s and 50s. Have varied interests. Like, honestly, people are going to want to know that you care about them and that you can talk to them. Like, that's, you could be the best strategic coach in the world, but for a general population, client who's paying you to train them, it's not like the NFL where it's like, like Bill Belichick, you can be a total tool because, Bill Belichick is paying them. The Patriots are paying them to play, so he can be ruthless, and he gets amazing results with that. But, the fitness industry is almost like an entertainment industry, and people have a choice of where they're going to spend their money. So if you're not enjoyable to be around, that's going to be a big challenge. So, that being really, really good. And I've made some of my former employees, go work at restaurants and wait tables and things like that to work on their people skills. And it's definitely, helped them immensely. So I would focus on that. And then, what I do is I bring new people in and I let them observe. And then I ask them questions that make them think. And a lot of times they're just kind of blown away by maybe the answer that I give. But I introduce all my clients. There's another article down at the bottom of the Jim Laird site. It's called Voodoo Witchcraft and Diaphragmatic Breathing. If you understand the canister concept of, pelvis in regards to rib cage and how the axial skeleton position affects how everything else moves. My acorn just hit my busa. That's nice. But another one. Is there a squirrel up there or something? But the axial skeleton and the position of the skeleton. So a lot of people will get caught up in like, oh, the shoulder's tight or the hip is tight or the ankle's tight or whatever. If you can manipulate through exercise selection the position of that skeleton and that rib cage, it's going to open a lot of things up. You're going to be able to help a lot of people. So that's the big concept that I really get people to understand when they come to me when they're a beginner, and then I let them kind of go from there. Okay, so if you understand that, how this improves things. And sometimes you want to, like take that away. There's certain sports like powerlifting and Olympic lifting and different things where, being in not what we'd call an ideal position, whatever that means, is actually could limit performance. So sometimes you're going to, like a top fuel dragster, you're going to want to take away its ability to turn side to side so you can go as fast as you can in a straight line. But that's a totally different animal. I introduce all my interns to, there's the product called Complete Core, and I know Bill Hartman absolutely hates the phrase core. Forgive me, Bill, but that's the name of the product because that's what sells. But Mike does a really, really good job of breaking down the basics of position and goes through all these different regressions and progressions of different axial skeleton exercises to get you in a better position and to get you so you can carry that position over into different activities and propulsion and all these fun little things. And so he's got that, and I go through that part with all of my interns. And then what now it's even better because Mike has this complete coach certification, which I've gone through completely, and it's fantastic. He takes some very complicated things and simplifies them and gives it to them in a way that's super manageable and a template, just like I used like the West Side for Skinny Bastards template, when I started, that you can kind of go from there and you can kind of plug and play and experiment. So, those are two things that I would look into. Mike, I know, opens his certification up a couple times a year, and he's having a in-person thing that I'm actually going to here in next month, and I'm just really looking forward to talking with Mike and Bill. And I always take something. It's interesting. Bill is this. If you haven't watched Bill Hartman, I would highly recommend you following him. But I would also warn you that your head is going to explode when you watch him. But Bill's this incredibly smart PT, and I remember going up and seeing him, and he gave me like, I was after a car accident. I'd never really had an injury in the weight room, all those years of doing really dumb stuff, and I went up to Indy and he showed me one or two little drills, and then he explained to me about bracing, circumferential expansion. That's where that Voodoo Witchcraft article came from. And then he said, when you're in your car, breathe into your low back. And every time I've ever had any kind of back discomfort or issue, I'm in a car, on my bike, I breathe air down on my low back, boom, fixes it. So, a lot of times simplicity is your ally. And if you can give people just a few little simple things and experiment and try different things and go from there, that's basically the bottom line. But dude, like, hang in there. Don't get frustrated. Do the best you can, and educate people on self-care, and start people where they are and keep it fun, and find some safe ways to challenge them, like at the end of their workout, whether it's air-9 intervals like 10-40 or 10 slamming medicine balls or dragging sleds at the end of their workout. And then figure out what standard you have, like what does a good squat look like to you. What is a good deadlift? Maybe you use a kettlebell. Experiment with raising the heels on the squat, raising the toes on the deadlift. It helps get their pelvis in a better position. And then as you learn, you can basically modify the exercises you pick and the things that you use. But everybody, the general population, people that you're going to work with, the majority of them need to learn how to essentially sit up and down, and how you load that. You can use kettlebells, med balls, different ways so they're not arched. Different types of crawls and all these sort of things. All these basic things is something that everybody needs to do as a beginner. So I would just pick a few things that to work on, and just kind of start experimenting, and take a look at Mike's stuff, and take a look at, he's got a really good thing on YouTube of just different progressions of how to do a lunge, how to do a row, these basic things. And then you'll start watching people move, and you'll start saying, well, that person doesn't do this well. They need to reach when they're doing push-ups, or they need to do a modified landmine press. Oh, that improved this, and that looks better now. And so it's just kind of this giant science experiment. Oh, thanks, Ben, for the feedback. I appreciate that. Ben is one of the clients I work with at the gym, and once again, just keeping things basic, getting his hips in a better position and stuff has helped his knee feel a lot better. And he trains hard, man. He's got, I don't think you missing an ACL, Ben? I can't remember. Probably shouldn't say that without your permission, giving away all your medical information here on the interwebs. Now you'll start getting all these knee stuff on your feed, but thanks for saying hi, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas. But I know I babbled on for a long time, but I would just focus, like, if you were me, I would follow Mike Robertson, and that's it right now. I would just follow his channel, I'm Mike is incredible about filming all these different things, and I'm gonna send you over there so you can look at his YouTube and look at all the different ways. He's got tons and tons of articles on how to squat, how to lunge, how to do a bear, or how to plank properly. And it's so simple, and it's so basic, and how to introduce breathing to your clients. And he makes a really good point, in his complete core book about, like getting people on their belly and getting them to breathe into their low back. And it might not be perfect, but it's getting them going in the right direction. And I think I say that to a lot of my clients, and they get really pissed when I say it, but good enough for now. What are we evolving to? It's a learning process. So don't be afraid to have people learn. Don't be afraid to experiment with things, as long as you're, keeping people safe and you're not doing anything stupid, like, having people do, 800 meters of walking lunges on their first day, and some of the things that I've seen over the years. But there you go. I'm going to hop back on the bike and zip around a little bit more, and then enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. I hope you enjoyed this rant, so to speak. And I hope you guys have an awesome Christmas. And I hope if you're in the Kentucky area, I hope you're outside enjoying this, because it is absolutely gorgeous out here. So have a great day.